Hey guys, how's it going? James here from Audio.etc. Today I'm talking to you about car audio brands. So if you don't know me or who I am, basically my name's James. I work at a car audio installing business called Audio, Sound and Security. I've been doing it for 5 years and I've had the privilege of working with lots of different brands of equipment and kind of figuring out over that sort of time what is good quality, what is not, who does the best this, who does the best that. And I want to try and shed some light on that because I know a lot of people, when they're buying car audio gear, they're not really sure what brands to go for. So I'm going to try and do my best just to, separate out some good brands and some bad brands, what to avoid, what to go for, and hopefully I help some of you. So I should also say straight away, I'm not here to attack any brands or any people who, may like them or anything like that. I'm purely speaking from experience, what I have picked up over the years just with experience with the product I have been able to use and install. And this video is just trying to help people, not attacking in any way. So the brands that I have worked with are LPINE, SONY, Pioneer, Rockford Fosgate, Focal, JBL, Infinity, Orion, American Hi-Fi, Fusion, Fusion Marine. I put that in there separately because they've recently rebranded themselves. ECLIPSE, Soundstream, Parrot, JVC. That's all the brands that I could think of that I have worked with. If you're curious about some other brands that I didn't list there, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to offer too much insight into them just because I haven't had any hands-on time with them. I may have heard of them, yes, but I just haven't had any hands-on time with them, so I don't think it's fair for me to provide any opinions or experience based on something I haven't touched. I'm going to talk about those brands individually, what I found from them. I'm going to try and also at the end of each one give them like an overall rating out of 10. I'm going to talk about who does the best speakers and who does the worst, who does the best and worst head units, the best and worst amplifiers, and the best and worst subwoofers. Right, so let's crack into it. So starting with LPINE. Okay, so LPINE have been doing car audio for I think well over 20 years now, a long time. They were one of the first brands to be, doing stereos and stuff in cars. Have been around for ages. We do sell LPINE at Audio, Sound and Security, and I think it's worth me pointing out at Audio, Sound and Security we like to think of our I think it's worth me pointing out that at Audio, Sound and Security we like to think of ourselves as the place you go when you want to get the premium sort of sound systems. There are a lot of installer bays out there who will install, all sorts of brands that are good enough for people. We like to be that place of prestige where you go to get the best possible installation, the best possible sound, and I think that really speaks to what brands we stock and sell and what brands we don't advise. So as I was saying, yes, we sell LPINE head units. LPINE do really great head units, very good quality. In the nearly 5 years that I've been working there, I've had maybe a couple of head units have to come back for warranty purposes or something like that. Often it was just something simple like the Bluetooth on it needed updating because someone bought themselves a brand new iPhone 7 or something like that, and the Bluetooth on it was getting up to a couple years old. So that was a pretty simple thing. I don't think I can think of any other issues I've had with LPINE head units. Very good quality sound output, depending on what version what stereo you go for, like the entry-level ones. Very good aftermarket sound output, but their premium ones, like the current CDE 163 EBT, it's got like a 28-bit DAC in it, I believe, which is what converts your digital media files either on a memory stick or on your phone into sound. And the higher quality that is, the better ultimately the sound is going to come out. So very good DAC in it. They now have time alignment built into them, which is awesome. Like 9-band parametric EQ, and you can adjust the level of each band, you can adjust which frequency the band sits on, and you can adjust the Q. If you're not sure what the Q is, if you imagine like a flat EQ sort of graph, and I want to turn the middle one up to +6, the Q is how much it drags out like the other frequencies. So if I turn the Q up, it's going to drag the frequencies beside it up more as well, but if I turn it down, the frequencies right next to it won't be peaked as much. Hopefully that makes sense. If you know what the Q is, then hopefully that was helpful to you. Yes, just very good quality machines, very good quality sound, and the faceplates, how they look, really nice, like nice and simplistic, not too flashy. There are a lot of brands out there who put flashing lights and all sorts of stuff on their gear, and I think it is really nice just to have that one brand out there who likes to keep things nice and clean and not too flashy looking. So yeah, really good head units. Their speakers are really good value for money. I think the best, like Alpine Type R speakers are our most popular speaker that we sell by far, by a long way. They're the best value for money. You can get a set of 6-inch coaxials for about $2.99, a set of 6-inch components for about $3.49, and they have 110 watt RMS rating, 330 watt peak rating, so you can absolutely smash them with an amplifier. But they're like 92 decibels sensitive or something like that. They're incredibly sensitive, so you can run them off like a factory head unit even and get a good sound out of them. And that's like not only the reason why they're our most popular speaker, but it's the reason why they're, for me and Grant, who's our other installer, our favourite speaker to install. Because you know, no matter what situation you put them into, whether it be under amplifier or under a cheap head unit, they're going to sound good. They have really good bass response, and not only that, I'll put a picture up. The magnet on the back of the Alpine Type R is tiny. They use a neodymium magnet as opposed to a conventional, what a magnet's made of, ferrite or something, I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. But they use a neodymium magnet, which is like literally this big, which means you can put them into all sorts of, like, when we're installing speakers, something we always have to think about is the magnet on the back of it. Is it going to hit the window? Is there going to be a window strut in the way? How much depth have we got to work with? And the fact that Alpine use nice tiny magnets on the back of them makes it so much easier for us, and we don't have to worry about it. So yes, Alpine speakers, particularly their Type R range. I unfortunately haven't had a chance to listen to their D-Linear series ones. We haven't had a customer who's wanting to get those in yet, so I don't know what those are like, but I'm sure they'll be even better. Alpine Type R speakers, very good. Subwoofers, yeah, pretty standard. I'd say similar build quality to their speakers. You can put some serious power through them, and they can give a good thrashing. I think they remind me a lot of Rockford Fosgate subwoofers, which I'll get to later, in the way that their magnet is almost the same diameter as their whole cone, like as opposed to a typical speaker with a smaller magnet and big cone. Their magnet is almost the same dimensions, so they need quite a big volume of air and a lot of power to go through them. But yeah, otherwise pretty damn good subwoofers there. And their amplifiers, I like their amplifiers. They put out a good punch, but inexperienced Alpine amplifiers are quite thirsty, so they almost always need a 4-gauge power supply, and if you ran them, you know, without your car started, without the alternator charging the battery, it would run it flat pretty quick. So that's what I've found with Alpine. I think it's because they like to use, you know, some more conventional analog components in their amplifiers. I've had some of them opened up. Even the PDX series, which is their most efficient amplifiers, they're D-class, which is good. They're about yay big, but they still take a 4-gauge power supply and they still chew through the power pretty quickly. So I like the amplifiers, definitely got a good punch to them, good output, but can be quite thirsty on the battery, on the current draw side of things. So that's Alpine. I would give Alpine definitely a rating of, I'd say 8 out of 10. The only thing that would be holding it back would be the amount of current draw on the amplifiers and possibly the materials they use to make their speakers. They use pretty conventional materials like ABS plastic and polyblast for their cones, which are fine, but they're just not quite up there as up there with some other brands. So 8 out of 10 for Alpine. I've just realised I haven't got this list in alphabetical order at all, so there is no order to this list whatsoever. It's not alphabetical or in order of favoritism. It's just I was trying to think of what brands I'd worked with over time, and I just listed them down. So Sony. I don't know as much about the history of Sony as I do for Alpine. I think just because I've been trained to sell Alpine a lot better. I'll just go straight into what I think of their product. Head units. I like that their head units have they claim to have a slightly higher output than some other stereos. Like most stereos you'll see will be rated about 50 watts by 4 max. For some reason Sony claimed to be 52 watts by 4 max. I'm not sure if that really makes a difference or not, but to be honest it probably doesn't, but I don't know, it'd be interesting to put it on a dyno and see. Sony did recently just come out with a couple of very interesting new stereos. If you watch Steve Mead, he recently put one of them into his Tahoe. They made this very hi-fi stereo which has like a nice aluminium plating on the front of it, and it's got optical audio output and triple preouts, and it's pretty much just, what do they call it? an HD media receiver or something like that. Yeah, no disc, just USB, auxiliary, Bluetooth, and radio. And was it satellite radio? I can't remember. But it's like a very HD receiver, and it's the first single DIN that I've ever seen that has optical output, which I bet is why Steve snapped it up, because he wanted optical to go straight from his head unit down to his 360.3, which is a sound processor if you're not sure. So yeah, I haven't had a chance to have a look at that head unit. I really want the rep to bring one by so I can have it touch and feel and play with it. That looks like a really good head unit. They did recently also bring out a stereo which does 50 watts by 4 RMS as opposed to max. So we do have that one in stock, and I've had a look at it. And what they did for that was they have the speaker outputs on a separate plug going into the head unit. It's just 4-channel, and the power supply, as opposed to being inside the head unit like normal, is actually outside. It has an external power supply, so you have to run like a good beefy couple of wires to the power supply for that. Then it plugs into the head unit, and it supposedly gets 50 watts RMS per channel. I have compared it with some similar units that aren't of that spec, and what I found was that the higher power stereo actually didn't go as loud, but the sound coming out of it was definitely more meaty and pronounced. The bass was deeper and more solid, the treble was a bit crisper, so it was like the difference between a nice meaty punch from a subwoofer versus just a cheap paper cone thing hooked up to a real boring amp making it thrash. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely doing some interesting stuff in the industry, and I think they're almost leading it in a way at the moment. They brought out a really nice unit which does CarPlay and Android Auto and made it really cheap as well, so I like that. But in regards to the head units, to be honest, I've never been much of a fan. I think I dislike them mainly for how they look. They're just a wee bit too flashy for me. Like, they're a wee bit aggressively shaped on the faceplate, and they have a lot of LED lights and flashing stuff, and to be honest, I'm just not as into that into it. It's not very clean looking. I do not like I hate the functionality of their Bluetooth phone. So in most stereos, you'll have all your sources, which you push source to skip through, and then you have a button to go into your phone, your Bluetooth phone. Sony did something, still do it differently. They make Bluetooth phone a source, so you have to skip through all your sources to get to your Bluetooth phone so you can call someone or something like that. I don't really like that functionality. It's a bit nitpicky, but that's what this video is about. I want to, tell my truth about these things, what I don't like about them. Yeah, I just dislike that functionality, and to be honest, I've always had the most problems, the most amount of customers coming into me with Bluetooth problems for people who have Sony stereos. Competitors do better Bluetooth chips. I don't know, Sony make their own Bluetooth chip. It just doesn't seem that good because they seem to have constant intermittency. I'm not a huge fan. Their speakers, no, not a fan. Not a fan of their speakers. There's just so many other better options out there for the same price. Like a lot of these brands, Alpine Type R, for value for money, will beat them out every time. So sorry, not a fan of their speakers. Amplifiers, again, not a fan. They haven't changed in ages. So they look like these days 5 years old, and they don't put out that much power. They're pretty weak considering the size of some of them. I've got one in my cupboard over there. It's like this big, and it only does 70 watts by 4. It's huge. I know that Sony made some really good amps back in the day. If you've ever seen their Pentagon amps that they made, I know that the red one, but more specifically the black one, had huge power output, and apparently those sold like wildfire because they were so cheap but had so much power output. Haven't had a chance to play with it, but that's just the rumour that I've heard at work. Grant, he's been doing it for a bit longer than me. And subwoofers, again, just same as the speakers, not a fan. They just feel cheap. And I mean, Sony is a cheaper brand. What can you do? So Sony, rating out of 10, 4. Brutally honest, 4. Not a huge fan of Sony at all. Apart from the fact that they're trying to lead the industry in a couple of different ways. They're bringing out some new technology that isn't just stated course. So I like that. But no, I'm not a fan of the brand of Sony. Pioneer. Pioneer is an awesome brand. I have had Pioneer stereos pretty much from the day I started because they're as good a quality as Alpine, but they have a few more features in their stereos. Alpine like to make it a bit more simple and clean. Pioneer just stick a few more sort of gimmicky things in them. Like the mixed, I'm not a fan of the mixed tracks thing where they tried to integrate their DJ industry into it. Don't like that at all because it's just, I mean, you can see my gear behind me, I am a DJ, and mixed tracks just is not up to par with actual DJing. Sorry, it's shit actually. But Pioneer gear, yeah, really, really nice head units. I like them. I have in my legacy at the moment. Actually, all the Pioneer stereos I've had, started off with a Pioneer DEH 8450. Moved up to a 9550, and then from that to my current, which I've still got, AVH X8850, which is an awesome stereo. It's like their top of the line doubled in with the triple preouts and time alignment and all the sound features and CarPlay and Android Auto and DVD and pretty much everything you can get in a doubled in stereo except for built-in GPS. But that doesn't matter, I know where I'm going. Pioneer do awesome stereos, love them. Speakers, not a fan, to be honest. Similar to Sony, a wee bit better quality than Sony, but just not the sort of quality I'm after. This is the thing. I'm not going to like a lot of these sort of brands just because I'm very picky with my quality of speakers. I like the best sort of stuff in my cars anyway. As you can see, the speakers I got here are just cheap bookshelf speakers. Man, I'm getting a dry mouth. I need to get a drink bottle. Amplifiers, and Pioneer and Sony, yeah, they just remind me of each other a wee bit. Pioneer just being a wee bit better. So amplifiers are okay. Subwoofers are okay. I quite like their slimline one that they did for a while, but current subwoofers that Pioneer do are just, yeah, they seem cheap. So I would give Pioneer a rating out of 10 of 7 because they do great stereos, but to be honest, not really a fan of anything else they do. Rockford Fosgate. If you guys know me, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I am an avid Rockford Fosgate fan. Rockford Fosgate are an awesome American brand. They don't do stereos. They did some back in the day, but they flopped a wee bit, so they don't do stereos these days, but they solely work on speakers, amplifiers, subwoofers, and they've also in the last few years been doing moto and marine gear. So interesting source units and marine grade quality amplifiers and speakers and stuff that can withstand the elements of like the sea and dirt and dust and grit and stuff. So Rockford Fosgate, their speakers, very, very powerful. Like you can thrash the hell out of them and they'll put up a fight. Not as huge of a fan of the build quality of them as I are with some others. So you guys know I love Rockford and I'm kind of bagging them a wee bit here, but that's only because I now have a new favourite brand of speaker which I'll get to later, like solely for their build quality. Rockford Fosgate speakers sound very good, you can thrash the hell out of them, but just I'm a wee bit nitpicky with their materials that they use to build their speaker. It's just because it's like pressed aluminium and plastic. Amplifiers, best thing in the world. I don't think I'll ever need to get another brand of amplifier. They are the best. They seriously are the best amplifier builder in the world. They were the first ever brand to make a car audio power amplifier. They've been doing it for a long time. To give an example, see this here? This is a box which a Rockford Fosgate 4-channel amplifier came in. This picture here that you see is exact size. See how it says the actual size? That's the exact dimensions of the whole amp. It doesn't show the depth, but the depth is about maybe 1.5 inches. So this amplifier puts out 4 by 100 watts RMS. Well, that's what it claims to put out. What they actually put out is more like 4 by 120 watts RMS at 4 ohms and 4 by 130 watts RMS, pardon me, at 2 ohms. So something the size, something smaller than a keyboard, putting out near on 500 watts RMS. Need I say more? So that's their Power Series micro amplifiers. They also do non-micro amplifiers. They make a T2500 BDCP, which puts out 2,500 watt claims. So this is the great thing about Rockford Fosgate. The power they claim to put out is always less than what they do put out. They come with a nice little birth sheet in the box that tells you exactly what the power they put out is, because before every one of these amplifiers goes out, they get put on a dyno and every channel gets tested exactly what power weighting it's putting out, and you get to see it all when it was constructed, its birth date, and yeah, they always, every time, underrate their amplifiers, unlike a lot of other brands. So like a 500 watt RMS amp this big, as I was saying, they also do big ones. The T2500 BDCP, probably about that sort of long, and that I'm sure puts out around about 3,000 watts RMS. So they do some big stuff too. They've been famous for doing doing the big stuff. A while ago, they don't anymore, but they did their T4000, which claimed to put out more than 4,000 watts RMS, which I'm sure it did. Steve Mead used quite a few of those back in the day, and they're like huge. So Rockford Fosgate amplifiers, they're best, in my opinion. Also quickly while I'm on the amplifiers, they are also the first company now to have come out with a powerless amplifier. Something that you just put in line, like so it goes speaker wise, this box, speaker wise, speaker, and it converts like 20 watts RMS to 100 watts RMS. Sorry, 100 watts peak, about 50 watts RMS. All sorts of clever technology. Most, like from looking at it, it looks like it's more of a capacitor bank for each speaker, but I have seen them demoed and they do put out. So yeah, first ever company to make a powerless amplifier as well. Awesome amps. Subwoofers. Similar to Alpine in the way that they make hugely powerful subwoofers. You can absolutely thrash the hell out of them, probably more than Alpine. And the great thing that I love about them is that they make so many different ones. They've got 3 series of gear. They've got Prime, Punch, and Power. In each of those ranges, they've got a multitude of subwoofers, ranging from 8-inch up to 19 inches in size, ranging from like 80 watts RMS up to 3000 watts RMS, and they've got, of each subwoofer, they've got different impedance loads, so you can get the subwoofer that's going to match your amplifier better. So they make like a 1 ohm version and a 2 ohm version, or a 2 ohm version and a 4 ohm version of each subwoofer, which is awesome that they're, you know, going to that effort to make a range of subwoofers so that anyone can get the right one they need. They're awesome. Next on the list we've got Focal. Now these are the guys I was talking about before. Focal are similar to Rockford. They don't make head units, they make speakers and amplifiers and subwoofers. But that's just their car audio brand. They are also, like a lot of other brands in a lot of different industries. They make studio monitoring gear, which you see a lot of big producers use in their studios. They make home hi-fi gear, arguably some of the best home hi-fi gear in the world, and they make PA gear as well, like quality PA gear, not just like your JBL top boxes that you see at every other gig. Like they make quality PA gear. And this is kind of their whole brand, like they are one of the brands that you go to for the quality, the build, the sound, the prestige, everything about them is just over the top and the best. All of their gear is hand built in France, so they're a European brand. Very, very nice gear. Focal are by far my favorite brand for car audio speakers. Pretty much any speaker, I'm sure, I would like them better. The build quality of them just by far exceeds anything I've ever seen. They make cast baskets for each one of their speakers, not pressed, cast, so that everything about them is just thicker, gruntier, and made of really nice material as well. Like sometimes it's anodized, sometimes it's like speckled, sort of metallic finish. Very, very good quality for their cones. In some of their cones they use Kevlar, some of their cones they use flax fibers, which are actually what's in the speakers that I'm intending on getting for my car. In their best tweeter that they use across their whole industry, across their car audio, PA, Pro and Studio and Hi-Fi range, they use their best tweeter, which is an inverted dome beryllium tweeter. And they had to construct a machine to specially make these tweeters because of the way the material how to make beryllium malleable in a way that they can make the shape that they wanted. They had to make a whole new machine. I could go on for hours about Focal. To give you an idea of the sort of prestige of this brand, their top of the line home hi-fi speakers that they make, which consist of just 2 stereo speakers with tweeters, mid-ranges, mid-basses, and 10-inch subwoofers on each stack. For the standard finish, because you can have them finish in whatever material you want, as long as you pay, their standard finish retails at $750,000. They must be very good speakers for $750,000. And people buy them all over Europe. I know for a fact that there's actually 2 sets of them in the city that I'm living in Christchurch. There is somewhere in the city 2 sets, accumulatively $1.5 million for just 4 speakers somewhere in the city. They make, in my opinion, the best car audio speakers in the world as well. Their Utopia series 3-way kit, I think it's the kit number 7. The beryllium tweeter, a 2.5-inch mid-range, and a 6.5-inch mid, with a great big adjustable crossover block, and I think that fetches a price of around about $6,500 looking at the price list at work. So yes, like there's so much I could tell you about these speakers, but I'm sure all you guys really want to know is, are they really the best? In my opinion, yes, Focal are the best speakers I've ever encountered. Just my experience, and I think I'll probably always use them from now on, even over Rockford. I did used to love Rockford the best, but Focal this is Rockford when I discovered Focal, just way up here. Okay, so Focal amplifiers. Haven't had a chance really to deal with the Focal amplifiers. The only reason being the price tag. It's cheaper to get a Rockford Fosgate amplifier, which we know work really well, than it is to get a Focal one. They are quite expensive, and I mean they do make some smallish ones, not as small as that, but unfortunately I just haven't had a chance to work with any of their amplifiers, so I can't really speak for them, but I'm sure they're really high quality made. Subwoofers. I have worked with a few of their subwoofers. Their Expert series subwoofer was really nice. Cast basket sounded great, but for some reason they recently brought out a flax fiber series subwoofer to go with the flax fiber series speakers. Just wasn't as good for some reason. Like, it was a pressed, I don't know what happened, it was a pressed basket, it seemed plasticky, and it was like a weird impedance. It was only a 4 ohm impedance, so you couldn't, you know, draw as much power out of an amp as you might have liked. So I'm not really sure what happened with that, because like I don't know. It was the successor. They had a really good subwoofer, then they succeeded it with this flax version, and just everything about it seemed average. So I don't know. I think I would actually, based on that experience, just say I prefer Rockford Fosgate subwoofers, even though I prefer Focal's speakers. Oh wait, did I do a rating for Rockford Fosgate? So Rockford Fosgate, I would definitely give it a rating of 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10, because they only really, you know, do 3 fields: amps, subs, and speakers. The only thing that lets them down for me is that their speakers, just by a hair's whisker. Just I'm not as huge of a fan of the build quality of the speakers, but their subwoofers and their amplifiers absolutely kick ass. So 8 out of 10. So Focal, rating out of 10. Speakers, in my opinion, best in the world. Amplifiers, haven't really had a chance to deal with them. Subwoofers, hit and miss. Probably also an 8 out of 10, because even though I haven't really had a good chance to deal with their amps and a lot of their subs, their speakers are just, in my opinion, so good that they deserve the 8 out of 10 just for their speakers alone. Like, if it was just their speakers alone, it would be a 10 out of 10. But I don't know what the amps and the subs are like. So 8 out of 10 for Focal. JBL. I haven't had a huge amount of experience with JBL. Pat, my boss, Pat, occasionally imports a couple of some JBL speakers every now and again. We get them from the same supplier as we get Alpine from, so every now and again there's a special one he gets JBL. It's not a huge seller for us, we don't do a whole lot of their gear. I've only really worked with their speakers, and now this is probably just because I haven't dealt with all of their best stuff. I've only really dealt with their cheap speakers. In fact, they are, at the moment, the JBL gear we have is the cheapest set of 6x9s we have in the stock. They're like $99 a pair. So JBL, I can only, because of my experience, give them a 5 out of 10. Wait, no. I have worked with the JBL amplifier, and the JBL amplifier, similar to the Rockford Fosgate one, has input and output clipping detection. Just that one model that I worked with. So for that they get an extra couple of points, 7 out of 10, because that's very good when you're trying to install an amplifier and tune the gains to the right amount. And if you're poor like me and can't afford a SMD DD1 distortion detector, having it built onto the amp makes a huge difference. So 7 out of 10 for JBL. Infinity, pretty much the same story. Haven't had a whole lot of work with them. I have Infinity, yeah, haven't really worked that much with them, but they do seem to have some slightly higher quality speakers in my opinion than JBL, so I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10, just because I've only really worked with maybe a handful of their speakers and their amplifier. I did work with 1 or 2 of their amplifiers, and they seem really big for the amount of power they're supposed to put out, similar to the Sony in that way. They were like 85 watts RMS by 4, and it was like huge, which seems a wee bit outdated. So Infinity, also a 7 out of 10. Orion. Okay, so now this is another problem. I've worked with Orion, but only their bottom of the barrel, cheap and nasty stuff. I know that a lot of people are passionate about Orion and that say that they put out some of the best subwoofers in the world. And I have watched videos and read reviews, and it does seem that way. Orion does seem to put out some really good subwoofers and some really beastly amplifiers, but I've only worked with their cheap stuff, and for that I have to give it a 4 out of 10. American Hi-Fi. Okay, we don't sell American Hi-Fi because it's shit. Move on. You know who sells American Hi-Fi? Don't know if you have this overseas, but we have a store in New Zealand called The Warehouse. The Warehouse is where you go and buy, you know what it's like? Walmart. It's like Walmart. They have everything but cheap and nasty, you know? So American Hi-Fi, absolute shit. Warehouse sells it, fails. Even the screw holes in the side of the stereos don't line up with brackets because it's made in China. Interestingly enough, the rep that we had who was selling that to us offered a lifetime warranty on all of this gear, which must be the only way he can make sales, because the gear in our opinion is just so shit. Moving on, so yeah, American Hi-Fi, 1 out of 10. Almost not even on the board. I can't say a single thing about American Hi-Fi that I like at all. Fusion. So now I'm going to do Fusion, their car audio gear, and Fusion's marine gear separately, because Fusion did recently all kind of reinvent themselves, rebrand, and cut their entire car audio lineup just to focus on marine gear, and I'll explain why in a minute. So I'm going to focus on just Fusion's. This is just Fusion's car audio gear for this one. Subwoofers, amplifiers, speakers, all of them cheap and nasty. Problems, yeah, cheap and nasty. They have problems. Made in China, not very good. Like really good affordability if you've got like no money and you want a subwoofer in your car. They back in the day made some really cheap big bass packs which put out a lot of sound but nothing quality. So I'd have to give that whole range a 3 out of 10. Yeah, 3 out of 10 because let's face it, in this video you want to know what is good quality, not what you can afford. So 3 out of 10. Fusion Marine. Okay, so as I was saying, they've recently pretty much rebranded and they've cut their whole car audio gear. They're doing just marine at this nowadays. They do some they do some really nice marine stereos, different shapes and sizes and things. What you need, they claim you can pretty much submerge the whole stereo underwater and it will still go. In fact, I think I've seen a video of them doing that. Their speakers, yep, they seem pretty good for marine grade. Again, just your entry level speakers, but they are marine grade and will hold up to the elements. Amplifiers, haven't had a chance to deal with those, but I'd have to say just because they've done such a good job focusing on some good quality gear. Oh, and also they recently brought out something called True Marine, which is they're delving into the market of portable Bluetooth speakers that you can just, you know, charge up, pair your phone to it, walk around, carry it, throw it in the sea, throw it in the dirt. They've recently brought out something called their True Marine stereo, and the quality of that was, I think, amazing. What sets it apart is the fact that it has AM and FM radio on it, because even though you can get a lot of Bluetooth speakers out there and even rugged ones that are designed to be waterproof and dustproof and stand up to the elements, which these Fusion ones do. If you drop them overboard in the sea, they'll float. You can leave them there for 30 minutes without getting any damage to them. Pick it up, shake it off and keep playing music. So they do that really well. They have AM and FM radio built in, which is something that definitely sets them apart from all the other Bluetooth speakers I know of. And also the sound quality absolutely blew me away. I'm usually not a fan of portable Bluetooth speakers at all. I think they're almost a rip-off because they're not producing all the frequencies. Like, how can they? They're something this big. But the sound quality coming out of Fusion True Marine, honestly comparable to those Bose lithium-ion battery docks that we can still get. You know, the ones that are charge-upable, Bose quality. And apparently, stop dinging. Apparently, Fusion actually got the BMW speaker designer in to help design the quality of these speakers. So, very, very good. So Fusion Marine, what don't I like about it? I don't like that they are still kind of that cheap brand in that industry. So I'd say 9 out of 10. I think it's probably also a good chance, because I didn't mention it before when I was talking about Rockford Fosgate, that Rockford Fosgate are really only their other competitors in this field. Everything else that you can buy for boats, like speakers and stereos, is just your cheap knockoff stuff that's way down in the bottom of the barrel, cheapest stuff. But Rockford Fosgate is a good contender for the market. They make really good quality marine units, really good quality speakers, really good quality marine grade amps. They actually make a marine grade version of this amplifier, and as opposed to being black anodized, it's like brushed aluminium, or sorry, brushed stainless steel, and they got titanium plated terminals. And yeah, if you want to see some of that gear, I actually installed a whole lot of it into a boat recently, and you can click here for the card. There's around about 3 videos. I think there's like the initial install of the speakers, the stereo, and then it comes back a later date and I install the amplifier. So check that out because they're really, really good quality. So yeah, as I said, Fusion Marine, 9 out of 10. Eclipse. Okay, so Eclipse is a funny one. It's not really around anymore that I know of. When I started working at Audio Sound and Security, Eclipse was kind of like a bit of a big thing, sort of dying out. My only real knowledge that I have about ECLIPSE is that it was like one of the best competition grade stereos and amplifiers and everything that you could get in its day and age. It's definitely not around anymore. We've still got one ECLIPSE amplifier in our stockroom that has just failed to sell, and it was back before even stereos had like auxiliary input. Like, do any of you remember when auxiliary input was like a flash new thing? And now it's like on every stereo, and it's pretty much a redundant feature now with Bluetooth and smartphones anyway. So I don't think we even need it, and we obviously don't need it. The iPhone 7 doesn't have a headphone output. So yeah, ECLIPSE, it did some really good CD players back in the day, because back in the day CD was like the only thing you had anyway. No memory sticks, just high quality CDs from the store, and they made some really good quality head units. A lot of them didn't even have power ICs in them or amplifiers built in. They had just preamps designed to go to head units, and so the power that they took in from the car meant that they could boost their pre-outs up to around about like 10 volts RMS per RCA output, which is really high and really good. So ECLIPSE, based on the experience I've had with it, 9 out of 10. Not something I'd go and buy today, because I think it's going to be useless today. You can only play CDs and radio. But in its day, definitely a 9 or 10 out of 10, because they did some really good quality gear, and everyone raved about them for having, you know, SPL and SQ competitions with them. Soundstream, Soundstream, or as we like to call it at Audio Sound Security, Shitstream. I probably just offended a whole lot of people. Soundstream is one of those brands that back in the day got a really good name for itself. Really good name. They did some hugely powerful amplifiers, big subwoofers, a whole lot of gear and speakers, and they were the best competition gear you could buy. At some point, I don't know when, because it must have happened at least 5 years ago before I was working, they must have sold out to China, because all of their gear now is shit. That's why we call it Shitstream. Honest to God, working at Audio Sound Security the last 5 years, I haven't had a brand of amplifier come back for warranty more than Soundstream. Like 50% chance that if I sell a Soundstream amplifier, it's going to be back within a few weeks under warranty for a warranty repair, and it actually has to get sent away and have the whole board repaired, because it's either caught fire, or a component has broken down, or something, or a screw inside of it has come loose and jumped across the board and fried everything. Just the build quality of them, shitstream. Speakers, pretty much the same deal, outsourced to China. I did sell one really nice set of Soundstream speakers a while ago, the Soundstream Reference series. Those were nice. Those were a cast basket and a really good tweeter and huge crossovers. Those were the only Soundstream product I've ever sold that I liked. Everything else, plastic, cheap shit. But the thing is, so many people still love it because they've heard about it and it's got a really good name for itself. But the thing is, it's taking people a while to realise that it's been outsourced to Shitsville, and that's going to break on you after you buy it. So that's what I have to say about Soundstream. Don't buy it. You'll be back in the shop for a warranty repair in the next few weeks. I give it a 2 out of 10. Now let's give them a 3, because granted, while their amplifiers do go, they can put out some mean power, but they don't last long. 3 out of 10. Parrot. Okay, Parrot. So Parrot predominantly is a Bluetooth hands-free brand. That's kind of how they made their name. They were like one of the most famous Bluetooth hands-free brands out there. I know a lot of people don't like them, and I think that's because they've had bad experience with them for when Parrot, well they still do, for their Bluetooth speakerphone kits, which you mount up on the sun visor, or the ones that you put in your ear, those sorts of things. My dad had one of those, the sun visor one, and yeah, they were pretty terrible. But the stuff that we install mainly are the Parrot's CK and MKI range, which are a Bluetooth hands-free kit, which actually interfaces, well not interfaces with your stereo, but it goes in line with your stereo, goes in between the stereo and the speakers, and has relays to cut off the stereo and put its own audio out the speakers. So the good thing is, when someone calls you, it cuts out the factory radio and plays the call audio through the speakers. So it sounds good. It sounds really good, unlike the Bluetooth speakerphones, which, like all speakerphones in my opinion, sound pretty shit. So they make really good quality, they make really good hands-free kits. Definitely one of the best brands out there. The quality of their Bluetooth chip and connection 10 out of 10, 100%. Best Bluetooth connection I can talk about. I think Pioneer still use Parrot for their stereos. They still use Parrot's Bluetooth in their stereos. I also really like Parrot's Asteroid range, mainly the Asteroid Smart, which is a double DIN stereo, which has built-in GPS and radio and USB and pretty much and everything you'd want from a double DIN stereo. The only thing it doesn't have is a disk drive, but those are sort of making their way out of the industry nowadays anyway. And these Parrot Asteroid Smarts are pretty much an Android tablet with an amplifier and a tuner slapped on the back. And I think they're really good. They work really well. They haven't got as many sound settings or adjustments in them as what a lot of actual stereos have, because this is an Android tablet we're talking about. But otherwise they still work and run really well. So I would give Parrot an overall rating of 8 out of 10. Where they lose out is occasionally we have problems with their Parrot hands-free kits, and it's not actually anything wrong with the product. What happens is the plug that goes into their module has really tiny little pins in it, like minuscule little pins for making contact, and I think it was just a bit of a design flaw that they went that small, because we often have to get them out and use our screwdrivers and sort of splay them apart a wee bit so that they make contact better and just tighten the crimps up. So it's not anything wrong with the actual product, it's just a design fault. They used, in my opinion, just two smaller little metal contacts for connecting their loom to their module. So 8 out of 10. Last brand to talk about, JVC. We don't sell JVC at Audio.etc because we can't compete with the big chain stores like Repco. Repco could just sell us way under the table because they're a huge store and they don't care about margins. The other reason we don't sell JVC is because it's like JVCs look a lot like Sony's and Pioneers. They've got lights on them, they're a bit flashy, but the quality of their output and their lifespan, just totally average. Their speakers and subwoofers are cheap and nasty. I would, in my car, prefer to have Sony than JVC. I can't say anything good about them. They're not as bad as American Hi-Fi, like that everything still lines up and they still work, but they're just not that good a quality. JVC, 3 out of 10. So if there's any brands that you guys are wondering about that I've missed, I'm sorry. I do think that it's all the brands that I've had the chance to work with and install. You may have to do something. I'm sorry, you may have to do some of your own research on them. So now what I want to do is just quickly go over who I think makes the best and the worst speakers, head units, amplifiers and subwoofers. The best speakers, by far Focal, no argument whatsoever. The worst speakers, American Hi-Fi, worst speakers. Best and worst head units. Best head unit, it's a tie for me between Alpine and Pioneer. They are on par with each other, but they do things slightly differently in the way that Alpine like a nice, clean, simplistic look. Pioneer do it a bit more flashy, not as bad as Sony, a bit more flashy and shiny and lights and stuff, but they do it in a nice, subtle way that isn't too glary on the dash, and they put a few more features in their stereos as well. I think here's the thing. There are better stereos than the one I have, like there's the Pioneer X008 AU. Alpine make a stereo with an 8-inch display on it. There's the 947 EU, which is like a 7-inch one like mine with built-in GPS and optical output. And then there's that Sony one I talked about, which is a single DIN with optical output, which is also really good. But for me, I think I just will always like Pioneer the best. Worst head unit, American Hi-Fi. Again, shit. Best and worst amplifiers. Best amplifier, I think. Now, I can't say that Focal is bad, but I haven't had a chance to work with the amps, so for me, by far, Rockford Fosgate, best amplifiers I've ever come across. And that's from both a owner's and installer's perspective, so they do the job great, but installing them, absolute breeze. Worst amplifiers that I've dealt with. JVC. I haven't done any American Hi-Fi amplifiers, I don't even know if they do them, but JVC would definitely be, I think, the worst amplifiers I've had to deal with. Best and worst subwoofers. Best subwoofer, Rockford Fosgate. Yep, again, they do the best subwoofers, I think, all across the world. Biggest range, best affordability for the power you get, and also they're really modest about their ratings, and everything works really nicely. And it's not just like loud but distorted bass, it's really clean and crisp bass. The worst subwoofer, I think I would have to say Fusion car audio subwoofers. Not a huge fan of them, like, although they did do some good affordable bass packs, but no, the quality just wasn't up there. Worst subwoofers, Fusion. Not Fusion Marine, just Fusion car audio, worst subwoofers. So that's everything. So that pretty much wraps it up with a setup of Focal speakers, Pioneer or Alpine head unit, and Rockford Fosgate amplifiers and subwoofers. And if you follow along with my channel, you'll probably find that that's exactly what I'm going to be putting in my legacy, because I'm looking at doing Focal PS165 FX in the front, Focal PC165F speakers in the back. I've got my Pioneer head unit already in there. I'm doing one of these Rockford Fosgate amplifiers, as well as a Rockford Fosgate subwoofer and amplifier that I've yet to determine. So that's pretty much everything, guys. I hope this video has been helpful to you guys in some way to try and figure out what way you want to go. I do hope I haven't offended anyone. This is all just from my own experience. If you do like one of the brands that I may have bagged, I'm not trying to have a go or anything like that. You have freedom of choice. Please don't leave negative things in the comment section. It just makes everyone up. It just gets everyone angry and riled up. But as I say, this is just from my experience. I've been doing this for nearly 5 years, and I like to think I know what I'm talking about a wee bit. So thank you for watching this video, guys. Have a good day. Choose to be happy, and I'll catch you in my next video. Ka kite anō.